Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott, and today is day 258 on my countdown to retirement. So, today I want to talk about just a topic that um, is top of mind for me, and that has to do with the unintended consequences of tariffs on new parents, young families. As my son's been in town, we've been talking about, you know, the cost structure where he lives in California and how untenable that is, and he's looking to move east, possibly to North Carolina or somewhere, where for what he does for a living, he can still make a reasonable salary, but the cost of living is substantially less. And so, affordability for him to be able to buy a house or do something becomes, more practical. But I happened to be listening to NPR while I was driving home, and they had Steve Dunn, who's the CEO and founder of Munchkin, on, and they were doing a story on the impact of tariffs, specifically on baby products, and was something I hadn't contemplated. Like I haven't, have him. My son's in his 30s, so it's not something that I thought about. And while I don't have a grandchild yet, it wasn't something that was top of mind to consider. And so while I was listening to him talk, one of the things that he brought up was the fact that with 140 plus percent tariffs on imported Chinese goods, basically all of the small to medium sized manufacturers of I'll call it baby products, have stopped ordering. They've completely stopped ordering from China because at that cost structure, they won't be able to sell the products to new parents. The people just won't be able to afford the items. And so Munchkin, as an example, is the largest supplier of sippy cups in the U.S. And they were saying how, even if they wanted to, they couldn't reproduce the sippy cups here because there isn't any die makers to be able to do the molded plastic in manufacturing plants here in the U.S. And they're not tooled up in most other countries to be able to move out of China to do that. And so because of that, among other products that they sell, Steve's going to have to potentially lay off up to 300 people, and he believes that the shelves in most stores, whether that's a Walmart or a specialty product store or whatever, will run out of inventory within about 60 days, and then there'll be kind of a crisis, if you will, of new bottles, the plastic inserts of bottles, sippy cups, strollers, carriers, like all of these products, better than 90% of them are produced in China. And so for young families, who are also on a budget, they're not only are they not going to be able to get the goods, but the goods they're going to be able to get are going to be cost prohibitive. So, that's one of the unintended consequences of the tariffs. And so the baby products industry, whatever, is lobbying Trump to get a waiver soon to be from tariffs on importing those type of products, so that the shelves don't go bad and they don't have to have layoffs across the industry. And so anyway, I started thinking about how the ripple effect of that will happen to a large number of small to medium-sized businesses, which is the backbone of the American economy. And a lot of people, obviously, that are small businesses, to keep their cost structures down, import from the Asian markets. And so whether it's China or Vietnam or somewhere else in Asia, the tariffs are substantial, and it will have a dramatic impact on these companies. And most of these people, are not in a place where they'll be able to handle any kind of onshoring, which I know is the ultimate goal that Trump is trying to achieve through the tariffs. But anyway, so that was an unintended consequence. And then, the fight that's been going on back and forth, or the a fight in words between, what Trump wants to do with Jerome Powell and the Fed and, lowering interest rates or whatever. And you know, I assume that Trump knows that the Fed only impacts the short-term interest rates, right? So things like the 7+% interest on a house, if someone's taking out a loan, isn't impacted by the short-term interest rates of the Fed, right? It's it's based on the 10-year bond, and that's based on market participants and how they decide to buy or not buy long-term treasuries, that move those interest rates. So whether Jerome Powell cuts rates or doesn't cut rates has no impact on the long end of the curve, which is fundamentally what Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent want to bring down the long-term rates because it'll help with the deficit funding, it'll help with improving the housing market because as rates drop under 7% and every quarter point that they drop stimulates the housing market. Anyway, again, while my son was here, we were talking about that. And one of the things that I was saying to him, because he was saying, like, it's just not, there's no affordability, no matter where he's looking at the moment, for him to be able to own a home. Like, they rent and pay a ridiculous amount of money for rent, way more than I've ever paid on a mortgage payment. But one of the things that I said to him was, if he moves east, and for argument's sake, let's say that they decide to move somewhere in North Carolina, and my wife is okay with it, for us, I'd be more than happy to help him buy a house that has a walkout basement, with the idea that the walkout basement would become what I'll refer to as a mother-in-law suite or whatever. But like, we would be able to build out the basement for our living quarters and actually seal off the access to the main portion of the house, so that there was really like two separate entrances, one on the walkout basement that would be for us to live in, and then him, his wife, and eventual family would live in the upstairs, and decorate and do whatever they wanted. It would also make it beneficial for me, so that one of my goals in retirement is to be able to travel, and I don't want to have to worry about who's going to walk, that you have to be home within every 30 days, otherwise your insurance coverage is a problem. You have to worry about squatters. There's all kinds of things that come with being away for an extended period of time, which, if you happen to be living, in a basement, and I laugh because it's kind of like, where parents always have their son or daughter living in the basement when they come back from college or something. Like, this flips that around, where we could use the space. We don't need that much space. We could make it, satisfactory for ourselves, and then we could go off and do the things we want to do. And when we come back, we have a place to live. And then also, if and when we have grandchildren someday, we're in very close proximity then to be able to see our grandchildren. If we need to help out with childcare or whatever, all of those things become possibilities. Plus, just from an affordability point of view, and also from a legacy point of view, we could get a house, we could put the house in a trust, right? Where, again, we help fund the thing, but then when we pass, our share of the equity that was put from the trust would automatically pass to him and his wife, which is going to happen anyway, whether we live with them or we don't live with them. So all of those things, I've been contemplating as part of, both my legacy plan, my retirement plan, etc. But all of these things kind of tie back to the economy and, the impact for young families, and, what we're now doing that isn't really helpful. And I know it hasn't been 100 days yet since Trump's been in office, and I'm not trying to make this about any kind of political commentary. It's simply I'm looking at what the policy is and what is the current outcome, uh, both how it affects me as as a soon to be retired person, and also how it's impacting you know my children or my child and his family, and others. And anyway, it's just been something that was on my mind. I thought I would chat about it with you guys today. Love to get your feedback about how you feel about these things and what other unintended consequences you see from the current policies that are being implemented. So that's my update for today. If you'd like to contribute to the to the conversation, please leave me a comment uh, or drop me an email at myretirementramblings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great evening. Until tomorrow, take care.